My lovely friends, welcome. So lovely to be here with you again. This is actually going to be my very last post for a while. I'm not sure how long, but I am going with the feeling, and things are just so busy this year, and I'm not able to maintain this to the level and the degree that I would like to be able to. I have loved so much sharing what I've been learning with you guys, and I hope it's offered some little bit of support and inspiration, because that is why I've been doing it. I have such a very strong urge to be of service, and my discovery of astrology has been such a profound assistance in my life dealing with big stuff. And I just want to share it with other people in the hope that it's going to help other people deal with really challenging, complex, tricky stuff that maybe they've worked through in lots of different ways previously without an enormous amount of success. I was blown away to discover how powerful astrology can be. Like most people, I grew up reading the horoscopes in magazines, which, let's face it, are fairly useless. And I didn't think there was much more to it. My discovery of the complex magnitude of astrological potential to understand the subtle dynamics that are in play in our lives, and how we relate to the cosmos, how the cosmos is connected to our own experience in life, has just been, really profound and deeply enriching, and has helped me heal a huge amount. These posts hopefully have been helpful to other people who have yeah, there's the hour of the moon. And that is basically what I am going to be talking about today, this coming full moon next week, and the lead up to this full moon, which is, from my perspective, full moons are always culminating events. They represent completions and conclusions and readjustments prior to moving forward. And so the days leading up to the moon in the astrology in those lead up days can be quite profound, I think, in terms of intending towards transitions and moving, more closely towards what we're aiming for in our lives. And the astrology this week is really, really powerful, and my need to kind of pull back my energy is, so in tune with what's going on. We have a lot happening. The full moon next week is in Scorpio. It's a very powerful full moon. There are a lot of surrounding kind of tensions and levels of intensity. We are going to cover some of those things. The sun has moved into Taurus. We have a packed house of Taurus, sign of Taurus. We have the sun, Mercury, Venus, Uranus, Black Moon, Lilith, all in Taurus. And this week, on Saturday, we're going to have the conjunction between Venus and Uranus, which is, pretty big, pretty powerful. Venus rules Taurus, and Uranus has been in Taurus for a long time, squaring Saturn. We're coming up to another exact square in June. But that square is only separated by a couple of degrees all year. So really that is the signature of this year, this sort of intense push and pull between the old way of life, the old way of doing things, and the new way, the kind of revolution, the innovating possibilities for greater levels of freedom in our lives, our livelihood, our sense of self-worth, what we value in life, how we use resources, etc., etc. Venus rules resources, she rules self-worth, so that conjunction that's coming up is very, very powerful but stressful, because Uranus is about sudden shocks and explosions and eruptions and rebellion. So it'll be interesting to see how that actually plays out in terms of the mundane astrology. It can signify unrest, civil unrest, and protests, and all kinds of drama. And because it's squaring Saturn, and Venus and Mercury will also be square Saturn at the end of this week as well, there is, Saturn represents kind of the forces of repression and restriction, and it can be kind of governmental forces that are kind of pressing down. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But coming back to my original little statement, I just want to say thank you so much for being here. All of this time, you know, it's been an amazing journey, sharing and learning while I've been sharing, and I am pulling back because I have so much other stuff going on. I'm working towards an exhibition and I'm going to take a deep dive into some more study. So I think I will be back because I just love doing the astrology, and I really love the possibility of being able to share with people how they can access their power and how they can access the power that's available in the forms and the expressions that it currently exists in any given moment. I'll still be doing some readings, not so many, but I love doing them. So yeah, if you're keen, let me know. Okay, so let's have a little bit of a look at the astrology for the coming week. Before we do, actually, I want to say that the kind of phrases that have been coming to mind for me around this time, with all of the big kind of transits that are in play, there is a lot of tension around them. And that got me thinking about the relationship between tension, attention, and intention. And all three of those words come from the Latin root tendere. I don't know how you say it correctly, but tendere is the root. And it means to stretch or to extend. So when we are experiencing tension, we are literally feeling stretched. That's why I have to stop doing these, because I am too stretched. I'm at a little bit of breaking point in terms of being able to use my energy effectively. So when we are feeling tension, we're being stretched to such a tight degree that something has to change. Either the tension snaps or we have to take action in order to release the tension in some way. Attention includes the prefix ad, which means to, so to stretch. So when we are giving attention to something, we are stretching towards that thing to give it awareness. So when we are experiencing tension, one of the ways to release that tension is to pay attention to the nature of the stress, to the nature of whatever is coming up for us that's making us feel under pressure. Paying attention to it, stretching towards it with a degree of curiosity. Attention really requires curiosity about what we're feeling, what's triggering it, what might be possible through it, what else might be going on, what the other perspectives might be, what the other, facets of the experience could be, is going to help to relieve or release some of the buildup of tension. And then, of course, intention includes the prefix in, which is pretty much the same in English, which means to go inward. So it's stretching towards something that is inward. So stretching inwardly towards something. So we are literally going into ourselves to think about what we are wanting to stretch towards and what we can plant a seed in relation to bringing forth in the world. So going in to create something in the outer world. That is also kind of the outgrowth of this tension. When we feel such a strong tension between the forces that are playing out, we, quite naturally create an intention around what we want rather than the particular stresses we're experiencing at a particular point in time. So tension creates the possibility for greater awareness and greater potential and possibility making, basically. So that for me is like really the signature of this week. Feeling the tension, paying attention to the tension and to what's coming up for us and what it means, what it might be saying, what it might be suggesting, and what it might be opening up as a possibility. And then being able to bring that inward and to think about what it is that we really want to create out of a situation like this. What is the ideal? What would we need to do in order to create that? The intention is not just a wish. An intention is stretching towards something with a kind of commitment to action, all right? We also have this week on Saturday, we have Mars moving into 0 degrees of Cancer, and it's going to stay there for 2 months. And for those of us who have complex family situations, that can feel a little bit apprehensive because, you know, Mars is the planet of conflict and aggression, assertiveness, and what I want, and taking action kind of spontaneously, not always thinking things through so clearly. It can be reactive. You know, these are all mainly the shadow aspects, and I'm talking about what we might fear. And Cancer is a sign of the family and the home. So there could be kind of, you know, there may be some arguments or challenges or reactivity happening in the context of family or home. But at the same time, you know, I'm always wanting to kind of point to where the remediation is, where the kind of the remedial magic is in the astrology. So everything has a shadow side and everything has a light side. And sometimes both are going to be present, and sometimes one will be more obvious than the other. And if we really kind of focus our intentions, our attention towards the kind of context of tension that we're experiencing, and create intentions that harness those energies, the more smoothly things go in that kind of more positive direction, so that tension really creates potential. So what can we do with Mars in Cancer? Mars wants to take action. Mars is really geared towards desire, what it really wants. So in the sign of Cancer, in the sign of the home, it is, what do we want to take action on to create a more enlivened or nourishing, emotionally satisfying home or relationships with our family? What actions could we take that would really kind of stimulate something new, stimulate something that's really meaningful and powerful and inspiring and nurturing and nourishing at some level? Cancer is a really sensitive sign. It's ruled by the moon. So the other thing about having Mars in Cancer is that you know, we will probably feel a very quick change in mood, you know, for the next 2 months in terms of what we want to take action on. So it's also a really good time to follow your feeling. What feels like the right thing to be doing right now? Every 2.5 days, that might change for the next 2 months, because the moon is ruling Mars. It's ruling, you know, our actions. So if we fight against what feels like the right thing to do, we might find ourselves coming up against a brick wall and butting our heads quite a bit. So it is a really good time to follow feeling and to pay attention to where the tensions are, and really kind of come inwards to think about how we could, you know, channel that Martian energy, that desire to take action towards something that is really what we want to take action towards, rather than just reacting in the moment to, to the tensions. So I'm kind of jumping all around the place a little bit at the moment. The first really big thing this week that I want to talk about is Friday's conjunction between Venus and Uranus, as I mentioned already. That's at 10 degrees of Taurus. And that is really, really big, because it's reactivating that square between Uranus and Saturn. And it is also bringing home to Venus, the ruler of Taurus, where the Sun has also moved into Taurus. And so Venus is really, there's a seeding that's happening between those two planets. When two planets come into conjunction, it's like a marriage and a conception. Something is being generated here. And it is about self-worth, it's about our values, our resources, about creating greater freedom, but it can be a little bit shocking and disruptive, potentially. Or we can really kind of think in a very innovative way about how we could change this. Whatever the scenario is, whatever the status quo in our life in this area of value, resources, money, self-worth, etc. Any place that we feel really stuck in a pattern there that seems to have repeated many times in our lives, this is a really amazing moment in which to be able to say, well, what if I tried it from a completely different angle? What if I did this? What would be the opposite of what I've always done? So we also have Pluto stationing at 26 degrees of Capricorn, and we're going to be feeling this kind of building intensity from Pluto It's going to turn retrograde the day after the full moon, so on Wednesday, the 28th of April. But the lead up to that retrograde motion is when a planet is moving at its slowest. So, and when it is at its slowest, oh my goodness, I can't speak. When it is at its slowest, it is also closest to the Earth, and we feel it most intensely. So Pluto is still in Capricorn. It's in the last degrees of Capricorn. It moved forward from a retrograde position at 21 degrees, I think, in September 2020. And it's been moving forward to 26 degrees. And now it is stationing retrograde, and it is going to go back over the same ground to 24 degrees and it's going to station direct again, move direct again on October the 7th, 2021. So we have a few months of this Pluto retrograde motion, and retrograde planets are always asking us to reflect, review, reimagine, reintegrate, rejuvenate, anything that has a re word is a retrograde word, and things can go really, really well in retrograde periods when we do that. Retrospective motion or reflection, review, rejuvenation, rest, relaxation, all of these things I think are going to be so needed by the middle of the year. We have a number of retrogrades coming up. We have Mercury going retrograde in Gemini from the 15th of May. Well, the shadows period starts at the 15th of May, and it's retrograde from the 30th of May to the 23rd of June. Retrograde in its own sign, which is really interesting because this year, I feel for so many of us, is really a year of so much learning and applying new experiences and new paradigms and new status quo and new ways of doing things into action. And we're all learning, and we haven't mastered things yet. So the retrograde cycle of Mercury, this time in its own sign, where the North Node is as well, so it's really where our collective destiny is pointing us to, is to kind of, you know, revise and review and redo, reimagine the ways that we have been doing things so far in order to be able to do them better when Mercury moves forward again. So I'm really looking forward to the retrograde period personally, because this year has been non-stop. So I think we're all going to benefit from the retrograde period in the middle of the year. So also on Saturday, we have the moon in Virgo is opposing Neptune at 22 degrees. So, you know, that will be interesting. That's on the healing axis. Virgo is really about physical health and well-being and the mind, kind of finding peace of mind, otherwise it can cause tensions that create ill health. And Neptune is really about, you know, that kind of dreamy, kind of hazy, foggy, can be very, very creative when it's channeled into that direction, but it can also be confusing and, you know, we may be a little bit obscured by an unclear understanding of what's really true and real. So that could be a little bit confusing, but also could be very creative or practical. It could also be a really good time to clean out the cupboards or do something practical with that sort of Virgo moon energy, if you're that way inclined. Otherwise, you know, really, I think creativity is a great expression of that energy on Saturday. We also have on Saturday, Uranus is exactly conjunct Mercury at 10 degrees. So that's a day that we might hear some news of, you know, quite surprising, shocking, revolutionary activity, the potential for hearing about protests that have been very impactful. Mercury is 1 degree away from Venus. On Sunday, Mercury and Venus will be exactly conjunct at 12 degrees, and they will be exactly squaring Saturn at 12 degrees of Aquarius. So these two fixed signs, and of course Saturn is ruling its sign, Venus is ruling its sign, and Saturn has the upper hand nonetheless at the moment, but Venus and Mercury are about to kind of escape Saturn's control because they will be moving faster than Saturn. And so there is a feeling of anything that we try to really make happen on Sunday or possibly on the weekend, we may not get great results with. in the immediate term, because Saturn is the planet of restriction. It's the planet of no and of obstructions and obstacles and the kind of difficulties in moving forward with something. So Mercury and Venus together want to really kind of, they're both business related or money related planets in some way. So there could be an obstacle in terms of being able to act practically in terms of financial stuff, but also in terms of communicating ideas or information that relates to beauty and creativity and relationships. Relationships are a big area. This is quite likely to play out, and so communication in relationships might be very interesting, with some surprising information coming forward that could feel shocking, and that we can't kind of change very quickly. They can't change the context or the scenario very, very quickly because Saturn's in the mix. But it is, as always I often say, it's productive in the long run, because those squares are those tensions where we need to pay attention and make intentions, because that is how we actually grow, always, through those tensions that basically mean that we're growing, we're stretching, we're getting too big for our shell, and we have to move out and find a new shell that suits us better. So on Monday, we have Venus and Mercury conjunct again, but this time they are at 15 degrees. And this is when they've just moved out of the influence of that kind of Saturnian parent, the kind of hard-ass taskmaster Saturn. And Venus has more freedom as she moves out of that square. And she and Saturn are kind of the most powerful planets in the sky, because they're both ruling kind of a similar number of planets. So that is actually really, is a nice kind of indication. But there's still pressure on Venus, because she's in such a close relationship with Saturn and with Uranus. She's opposing that full moon that's coming on the Tuesday. So the full moon in Scorpio is exact at around about 1 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time on Tuesday, the 27th of April. And it's a really big moon. The moon is in its detriment in Scorpio, because it's exalted in the opposite sign of Taurus. And when the planet is in its detriment, it doesn't mean that it's terrible and it's bad. It's just that it struggles a lot more. And that makes sense, because Scorpio is such a deep feeling sign, and the moon is so much about feeling. So it can bring up a lot of really deep and challenging, intense feelings. It may not, but it may as well. And we have such a packed house of Taurus, which is opposing the moon. The sun, of course, illuminates the moon, so they're naturally in opposition. And then we have Uranus and Venus and Black Moon Lilith and Mercury, all opposing the full moon. On the day of the full moon, Black Moon Lilith and Venus are exactly conjunct at 15 degrees. So that kind of does give us an indication that some of that deep feeling is about the kind of the outcast parts of ourselves, the parts of ourselves that have not been accepted. And those kinds of feelings and issues and experiences could be amplified on the full moon. The other thing about this full moon is that it's associated with Buddha, the Buddha moon, because according to the story of the Buddha, he was born on a Scorpio full moon, and he ascended, he transitioned, he became enlightened. He became enlightened on a Scorpio full moon, and he died on a Scorpio full moon. To me, this is such an interesting and beautiful metaphor, because, Scorpio rules death, it rules trauma, it rules other people's stuff, it rules transformation. The only way we can get to transformation / enlightenment is to really be with the hard stuff, to be really present to you know, the traumas that are actually the things that transform us, the things that are the riches that we are literally mining to bring to the surface. Pluto means riches in Greek. I've said this before, but you know, in Greek mythology, Pluto had a dual name and character. Pluto, Hades, they were the lords of the underworld, the god of the underworld, of death. Hades was the really dark side of that archetype, and Pluto was the kind of the riches side of that archetype, the loving husband of Persephone and the god that produced the riches of the earth through these transformative processes of death and decay and regeneration. So this is Pluto, and Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio as well as Mars. And on this full moon, Mars will have moved into 2 degrees of Cancer by that time, and Cancer is ruled by the moon, and Pluto is just about to go retrograde the next day. So it's moving at its slowest point. So this full moon is ruled by these 2 planets that are really powerfully, intensely activated right now through these interrelationships. So this makes it more powerfully transformative. And of course, in terms of the stuff that may be coming up with Mars in Cancer, Cancer rules memory. It rules the past. It rules what happened to us in childhood, the experiences that we had that shaped our views of the world, our capacity to live and to act and to be ourselves. And so some of those kinds of issues might come up now as well for attention and intention making. So thinking about this kind of potential for Buddha-like enlightenment, even at the micro level that we're capable of right now, is really powerful. And we actually can, even though full moons are culminating times, they're adjustment times. So this moment is really asking us, what do we want to adjust in order to evolve to the place where we want to be? And we need to look at our memories, and if they're coming up, if feelings are coming up in relation to the past, give it loving attention. Let's show it love. Let's invite it in, welcome it in, make a welcome home for it, and let it do its healing magic and allow us to get clear in an organic way about what we're really wanting to intend and what actions we need to take in order to achieve those intentions. What else do we want to say about this full moon? It is squaring Saturn as well. So Saturn is squaring Venus and Uranus and Mercury and Black Moon Lilith. Very strong square. Although most of those planets, Uranus is still moving towards an exact square with Saturn, but the other planets have just moved past that square, so they're a little bit freer, but still it's a powerful square. And then the moon is approaching a square to Saturn, so it's a T square. It's forming a T square. There's significant tension there. And the moon also in Scorpio wants us to go deep. It wants us to delve deep. There can be a fear in Scorpio of actually facing those deep feelings. There can be a tendency to want to repress what's coming up and to not feel it, to ignore it, to get on with something else, to distract ourselves. And, that's always an available option, but it's not a very effective one in the long term. It's one that can kind of perpetuate suffering or, a lack of freedom, really facing the stuff that is coming up with love and with kindness and respect for ourselves and for others is really going to help to release some of that tension, paying attention, giving attention. I also think in relation to my earlier little rant around tension, attention and intention, I've always had this phrase in my head that I feel is, quite powerful, quite potent, that love is a kind of attention. That is what love is. You cannot love something really without giving it attention, without attending to it in some way. And these parts of ourselves that might be calling out in pain or in fear or in challenge in any kind of way are asking us to give them loving attention. It's like little children, the parts of ourselves that are wounded and hurt and scared and, problematically feeling are like the little child inside of us. And, most of us are aware that when a child is acting out badly, behaving badly, it means that they're suffering and they're struggling with something and they need attention to understand it, to process it, to be heard, and then they settle down. They are able to move through it. If they don't get the attention they need, then that problem exacerbates and becomes much, much worse, and it becomes a pattern of behaving that, I think that we're all really familiar with. We all have some of those patterns, from childhood that are, maybe not pleasant and not attractive, and not the kind of behavior that we want to be doing, and we don't feel we can completely control it. And that's because we haven't given it our full loving attention, and so it keeps acting out because it doesn't understand itself. Scorpio is also the sign of psychology and therapy. So giving this loving attention to the parts of ourselves that are wounded and crying out is a kind of therapy, a kind of therapeutic practice of really listening to what's happening, to what we're feeling, to what's going on, and attending to it with the most loving kindness and this curiosity to understand, attention, curiosity, this stretching towards it to try and make sense of it, to understand it, to give it love. Once we understand the origins of all tricky and challenging and terrible situations, it really shifts it. It really helps to shift it, because when you love something and you can show something love, the hard, terrible behavior, it immediately softens under that love and attention. I'm sure you've all seen that too. So that's the thing to keep in mind about this Scorpio full moon. Show it attention. Whatever's coming up, whatever's challenging, show it loving attention. Be curious about it. What's going on? This is a great time for journaling. It's a great time to see a therapist. It's a great time to just let yourself feel. With Mars going into Cancer as well for these next 2 months, it is a great idea to pay attention to what the moon's doing. Have a look at a moon calendar. You can look online, buy yourself a moon calendar, see where the moon is, because it can help to kind of guide our actions forward a little bit. Like, what are the good times to do things, in each sign. That will change as the moon moves through each sign, through that period. It can really kind of help us harness those energies if you're interested in doing that. That's something to think about anyway. So yes, on Tuesday, Pluto goes retrograde. And as I mentioned, Pluto is going to stay retrograde until October 2021. Pluto is in Capricorn, so it rules kind of structures. And Pluto is about the destruction of those structures and kind of the need to topple something that is not working. So we all have a sense in our lives, I think, of what is not working, or at least the feeling that something's not working. And again, that's where we want to pay attention, stretch our awareness towards the thing that is not working. And Pluto is transformation, so it wants to transform something now, and it's gone so far to 26 degrees of Capricorn. We've understood some things, and now it's saying, okay, now we need to go back and relook at this stuff. What do we need to revise? What do we need to reform? What do we need to rework? And again, if we work with that planetary energy, it can be really, really powerful. So, and in Capricorn's such a slow moving sign that anything that we really do transform there is going to be lasting. It is a really healing moon. It's a really powerful, powerful kind of rebirth, a death and a rebirth in a way at a metaphorical, symbolic level. And I really hope for all of you guys that there is some magic in it, because it is a really magical moon as well. I just keep thinking of that, the Buddha reference. That's wild, that he reached enlightenment on this Scorpio full moon, and that there's that potential for us as well by really giving attention to the deep, deep stuff that is our own, that's the blueprint of our greatness as well as our suffering. Thank you so much for being here. This has been such an amazing journey and I have learned so much. I'm just so grateful to all of you who have, reached out and said such beautiful, heartwarming, generous, gorgeous, amazing things, such beautiful feedback. It has meant the world to me. It really, really has. I love doing this. I love helping other people. It's what I really feel so passionate about, and this has been a small way for me to do that. I am wishing you all so much love, and I don't even know what else to say. I don't know how to express my love and gratitude for you all, my beautiful friends. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. I feel emotional. And I will see you on the flip side. I'll be posting occasionally some stuff, maybe as I kind of create some more gear towards my exhibition, and maybe I'll do the occasional astrology post if things just feel so amazing I just can't contain myself anymore. But until the next iteration of this journey, I'm wishing you so much love, and thanks again. And I love you guys so much. Thanks for being in my life and for being such a beautiful force, a beautiful energy, and an inspiration in so many ways. I am so excited to see how everybody's creative journeys are going to unfold over the rest of this year, into next year and beyond. It's such a big, big time. Love you guys. Thank you again so much. And I look forward to seeing you somewhere, somehow, soon. And yeah, big, big love. Signing off. Happy full moon in Scorpio.